Regular meeting of City Council for Monday, November 6th to order. Welcome. Obviously, all of us are suffering a little with sore throat. We took off the U17 yesterday, and so feeling well. So our first order of business this morning is new councilor business. Councilor Wilbur.
Thank you. So yes, NCLGA just had their November board meeting, so an update will be coming to all our members shortly for that. But we have our nominees for our community awards, so I would just like to list them because voting will start today once council is finished. So for Entrepreneur of the Year, we have Claudette Hauber, Jessica Holland, and Cynthia Lavalle. Business of the Year, we have SL Enterprises, Uniglobe Travel, Peace Energy Cooperative, and the Dawson Co-op. And Citizen of the Year, we have Cynthia Lavalle, Jacqueline Jansen, Stu and Marg Flynn, Crystal Robar, Dale Bumstead, Candace Ziramak, and Meredith Thornton. And I apologize if I'm wrecking anybody's name here. And youth, we have Jaden Ford, Braxton Goldad, Jaden Mayo, and Layla Hengley. So congratulations to all those nominees. And I ask the community to get out and vote and for council to share it on your Facebook pages.
Thank you, Councilor. Anything further? Councilor Parslow?
Yes, just one thing here. Oh. You broke it. You've all seen this. I was parked outside of Central School looking at the bridge replacement. And it reminded me, when I saw this in the office here, that in many communities I've been to, I find it interesting when I'm walking around looking at a number of these plaques. Whenever something significant is built, whether it's the Encounter Event Center or the refurbishing of the old post office to a cultural center, there's a commemorative plaque. And this also goes to major pieces of infrastructure such as bridges and so on. And I think for me, history is important. And I know when I was school superintendent, every school had such a plaque. It was paid for generally by the architect or whoever built the school. But it adds a bit of history to the community. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't explore this as a policy thing, that because I think we have a duty to create history and help people understand how the communities developed. And I think things like this do that. And I'm thinking that here we have a bridge that will last hopefully many years, but it just and when they are replaced, the old plaque is retained and a new plaque is put underneath. And when we had what for me is a very nice piece of punk art that was put up by the art gallery, there's a plaque there, and I just like the city to consider it as a policy.
Right. And so just through to administration, we have a naming policy for things, but I think what Councilor Parslow was suggesting is we just put a plaque installed to commemorate when it was opened and
who built it,
who was council and all that.
Yeah, there's an interest in. I know that we never had any problems because the either the architect or the company who built it funded it. But I think it's we have a few of them in town, but you go to other places and they're all over the place. And I, for one, I find it interesting. So I'm just making that a suggestion. I have another item as well. Friday, I attended the Exploring Art grand opening at their new facility, and there was about 60-odd guests that attended that. And their numbers are growing. They're very delighted with their new home at Northern Lights College. So I'd like to, as my interest in the arts, and I'm sure the interest of the council in improving the quality of life for people in this community, to extend congratulations to Exploring Art in securing such a nice location, and to the Northern Lights College for doing that. The college has said that if the building that they are in right now, which is just great, if it's removed, they will find another home for them at the Dawson Creek campus. So I think that's a real win for the college, win for those artists, and win for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, where are they? Are they in that annex?
Okay, if you
over by the
remember,
gazebo?
I'm sure you possibly, if you didn't, I'll explain it better, where Bob Hoden's office was. You go in the back entrance
Yeah.
of the college, which is now the main entrance whilst the construction's going on, and you drive down the road. The second group of buildings that are perpendicular to that road on the right-hand side has been, the major portion of that has been given to the Exploring Art Group.
Nice.
So they have a studio, they have a workshop area, they have offices, washrooms, and they're delighted, and it's operating many days a week.
Nice.
Bring the item back for the plaques for policy review back in the mayor's business. Ask for council's direction. Brenda?
Since it was a late item, there should be a motion to bring
Move
it forward to mayor's
mayor's
business, yes.
Councilor Schuman, Councilor Over, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Any other councilor business? Item 3 minutes, 3-1, we have the minutes of our special meeting of the council for the 16th for adoption. Councilor Rogers, Councilor Schuman, any errors or omissions in the minutes? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 3-2, we have the minutes of the public consultation, council of October 23rd for adoption at 6:20, Councilor Wilbur, Councilor Parsons, any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 3-3, we have the minutes of the public hearing, City Council for adoption. Those the same?
Consultation and
No,
then-
there was a public hearing and a consultation. I'll move.
Councilor Wilbur, second. Councilor McFadden. Errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And 3.4, we have the minutes of our regular meeting of the council for adoption. Councilor Schuman, Councilor Parsons, any errors or omissions in the minutes? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of any of that, out of those minutes?
Just one question.
Councilor Rogers?
In 3.1, we were given an update on the U17 tickets. Are there actually any left, or do we have an idea where we're at with that now? I just remember that hearing rumors that there's no more gold medal tickets and stuff like that. I just wonder if there are any.
Duncan, you want to?
Sure. So through your worship, at this point, there's no tickets left. However, they are looking at opportunities for standing room. Also, there's a number of corporate sponsors that may not be able to attend the event. And so we're following up with those sponsors to see if there's an opportunity to release some more tickets because people won't be attending, in particular Hockey Canada and some of the other corporate sponsors. So I understand that there will be a release of some additional tickets in the near future. I don't know when, for the gold medal game.
And that's for the gold medal, bronze medal game on
Correct.
Saturday? Just for clarity, there are tickets still for
All the other ones,
the
yes.
other ones. Good, thank you. Great response so far. 4.1, we have a discussion regarding nominations for the BC Achievement Awards. And so because we're going to be potentially discussing specific names that we're going to be putting forward, I think we would like to request at this point if we can move this to close, just so that we can then discuss it in close when we have specific names that we'll bring forward. Councilor Schuman, Councilor Parsons. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 4.2, we have a memo from the Deputy Director of Corporate Administration regarding the BC Cannabis Regulation Engagement Feedback for ratification. Councilor Parsons.
I move that the letter to the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General and the Cannabis Legalization and Regulation Secretariat regarding the City of Dawson Creek's feedback concerning the legalization and regulation of non-medical cannabis be ratified.
Thank you. Second, Councilor Schuman. Discussion? Just appreciate everybody taking some time to provide some feedback in. And certainly we did this last Thursday at the Regional District Board as well. and provide that feedback to government in terms of as they're seeking feedback from folks in terms of this proposed legislation and legalization. Councillor Jeanette?
I was just wondering, just reading over that, it's talking about smoking so far from the doors and that type of thing. Do we anticipate people walking around smoking pot in public?
You know, and I think that's the uncertainty until they pass the legislation in terms of the legalization of it. You won't know where and how and who, what age and all of that. And so, to me, I just think we want to put some input into it in terms of helping guide some of those decisions and considerations that they have in terms of passing that legislation.
I just think about alcohol. I mean, you're not allowed to walk around downtown with a beer in your hand, but and pot is, not that I'm experienced with it, but it is similar. It's you know, an illegal substance, well, until you get to be 19. I was just wondering about that. My submission was that we should treat it the same as alcohol. You know, then you're consistent. But I'm just, you know, I got granddaughters that are coming up into that age, and I'm just curious about how it's going to be handled.
Yeah, so one of the things that as we were reviewing it, the one that I really want to try to do is restrict the possession amounts that people have. Because if you restrict that, hopefully then it restricts the ability to sell it to youth and all of that. So that's my concern. Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for giving that input in as well. Item 5, correspondence. We have a letter from Edward Armagost, Chair of the Agricultural Service Board from Saddle Hills, regarding a bylaw around St. Louis chamomile. And Councillor Parsons?
I move the receiver for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Councillor Chibeko?
This is pretty significant in town. I had a few calls about the St. Louis chamomile in town, and especially on the north end of town. And I know that my daughter's place out there, she had some, and it's pretty regulated. I mean, you have to, the requirement is to pick it and put it in a plastic bag and take it to Bessborough for disposal. But in town here on the north side, we've got acres and acres of it that's just kind of there. And it's never, well, it has been addressed apparently, but the regional district received reports as well. I'm just wondering how we treat it. I mean, I know we don't have noxious weed bylaw for the city, but we should have a policy where if it's, you know, identified by staff or us or anybody, that it is reported immediately. Like, I didn't receive a report on this these weeds until late in the year. You know, they were pretty well already gone to seed. But if it's identified early, it can be dealt with. And you know, the situation up here on 8th Street, I mean, you've got weeds on the west side of 8th Street, and there's some are fallow on the east side on the guy's farm. You know, it just, with the prevailing westerly winds, it's, you know, it's a real serious case to me. But I would like to see us have some kind of a policy, not where we just sit back and wait for somebody to report it, but we actually take a proactive role in reporting it ourselves. And I don't think it applies to, you know, residential areas. I mean, people, you know, it's not as serious in a residential area, but in a developing area, it's pretty dramatic. I mean, and it's been identified as a high priority noxious weed, whereas Canada thistle has been reduced a little bit in its status. So I don't know how we go about it, or I don't know what the policy is at this time.
Doctor?
So, through your worship, we weren't actually aware, and I think I maybe had emailed this out to council before, that the regional district was coming into Dawson Creek. We were relying on a previous conversation where the regional district had tried to get the city council and the city to look after noxious weeds within the community, and council had kind of said, regional district, that's your responsibility. So to date, we've been applying the tall weed and grass bylaw to noxious weeds and to the city as far as regulation. We're now aware that the regional district will regulate this, and they will come into the city, and it sounds like they will apply their bylaws and their fines. So we'll be reporting all cases of noxious weeds within the community to the regional district now.
Right on.
And that sentence coming is a serious issue for the regional district because, as Councillor Jakob indicated, there is only one way to deal with it. You don't spit, you can't spray it, you've got to pick it, and you've got to bag it and keep those seeds contained because they can stay dormant and germinate after a long, long period of time. So anyway, thank you for that. That's good information. Any further discussion on receipt for information? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have a letter from Mayor Nichols from the District of Chetwynd regarding the Canada 150 Challenge. And so before we move to that, I just wanted to display for everyone, and we'll have this at City Hall, but this is a photograph that displays all of the communities who participated in the Canada 150 in Tumbler and Chetwynd and Taylor and Fort St. John and Dawson Creek. And it's a really good idea in terms of how we brought the communities together with a real nice initiative celebrating the Canada 150. And so we got a picture of them all on the community photo challenge that Chetwynd brought forward. So I just wanted to show that to everyone, and we'll have it displayed at City Hall.
And thanks to Chetwynd. That's
Yes,
very
thank
nice
you.
of them to send us that.
So I need a motion to receive. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Schumann. All in favor? Opposed? 5.3, we have an email from Liz Gustafson, Congress Coordinator for the Peace Country Beef Congress regarding their 2018 Beef Congress sponsorship and trade show. Duncan, can you tell us what we did last year?
So through your worship, last year we were a gold sponsor at $5,000.
And this now as a the Peace Beef Congress used to move this around the Peace Country and the different communities, and now they're looking at just doing it in Dawson Creek because of the Lakota Center, the Canada Event Center, and they're doing it here on now an annual basis just because of the facility and the geography for the Alberta Peace and BC Peace farmers and beef producers. Councillor Schumann?
So through you to our CFO, what do we have in our sponsorship fund at the moment? Do we have
This would be the
5,000?
2018 budget as
Oh,
well.
it's for the 2000, so it's a full
Yeah.
amount in there.
Duncan?
To your worship, provided council maintains that, it'll be available in 2018.
Councillor Schumann?
I would move that we again sponsor to the tune of a gold sponsorship of $5,000.
Secretary, Councillor McFadden, discussion. Councillor Wilbur?
Actually, through you to Councillor Rogers, has this group applied for any NDIT funding?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to talk about it anyways, but no. Can I carry on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We expect you to.
If he wasn't good, I was, because I think they were asked to.
Well, they've been applying for it every year since I've been elected and been sitting here. And last year I had said that, you know, this is available. There's a $2,500 grant for them to apply for. And I believe I've been clear, consistent anyways, that I talk about NDIT, it seems like at every single meeting, and advising the public on, you know, there is opportunities. And I have talked to people that are out at Lakota and said, you know, this grant is available. And here we go. It's frustrating for me because there's money available and it's not being utilized, and it just seems like let's just go to the city because it's a whole lot easier. The city council has tried to make it easier for these people. We've provided them with a grant writer, and some people are not taking advantage of that opportunity. And maybe they think $2,500 is not enough, but I'm not in favor of giving them the $5,000, but you know what? I'd be in favor of giving them the $2,500, and then they can get the other $2,500 through NDIT.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Giacomo?
So could we make an amendment to the motion that we give them the $2,500 and suggest that they apply for the other $2,500 through NDIT? And just as information, I've applied for that grant. It is very simple, like it's about 6 lines, and it takes you about 10 minutes to apply for it, and it's a quick response.
So the amendment would be contrary to the original motion of putting the 5,000 out, but if we wanted to help me along, administration, if we want to say we want to engage with NDIT on behalf of them, with them, to help them to apply for the $2,500, but we have to do something. Brendan, help me.
Through your worship, we could amend the motion to reduce it to $2,500 from the city with direction to go to NDIT.
For the other. Okay.
I'm good.
So you're making that by way of an amendment to the
Yeah.
motion. And is that seconded? Councillor Schuman? And so, good. Further discussion on the amendment? All in favor? All the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And on the main motion then is as amended, that we move forward with approval for Peace Country Youth Congress to the event, and we would give them $2,500, helping them go to NDIT for the other $2,500. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
5.4, we have a letter from the Citizens for Safe Technology, Microsoft resolution and notice of wireless harm. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, this was dealt with at UBCM. I believe it passed, didn't it? I know I voted for it. Is that?
Yeah, it
Did? Yeah. This raises a deep sense of concern in me, and so I just don't want it to receive it as information. It seems to me this has some overtures towards our official community plan, and I think we do need to refer this to staff to come up with some appropriate policy, because anything that raises health concerns is, I'm sure, of concern to each of us here. And there seems to be fairly widespread scientific support for the fact that this does raise some concerns. So I'm wondering if we can direct that this be considered, some of these suggestions be considered in our official community plan, and also reflect back into some policy for the community.
So can I ask the question if we put it into OCP? OCP is just about completed, isn't it?
Correct. So through your worship, if I may maybe get Kevin and Alex to talk about what we currently do. Yeah.
Good morning. Through your worship, regarding microcells, so we currently don't have any policy or any regulation around it specifically. If it's something that council wishes, it would likely fall not in the OCP but into the zoning, because the zoning is the regulatory piece that would talk specifically about where, how tall, how far away from, those types of things. So if it's something that council wants to explore, then we could certainly forward it to that. Because following the OCP, which will be done here early into the new year, we will be required to then follow up with making sure that the zoning is consistent with the OCP, and there'll be some changes with that.
Now, it seems to me that, was it Bell that installed the tower out behind kind of by the liquor store, the Jiffy Lube
Right.
there? Federal jurisdiction, and so we have they don't need to permit, we have no input into, is that a microtown?
Through your worship, know that my understanding is microcells would be something that would be attached to structures or poles or something so smaller in nature. So there might be some opportunity through building regulation or something there that would allow us to have some say in that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Councillor Parslow, I think your direction is to put it include it into the OCP discussion, but if we direct administration to bring back a recommendation on the policy for it, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, as I understood, Kevin, he talked about after the OCP, the whole bunch of regulations and stuff flow from that. But if there's no mention of this in the OCP, then what flows from it?
So through your worship, if council gives us direction to look at regulation around this, then we will.
As a separate topic. I would like for the staff to review this and come forward with some suggested policy.
Good, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur, discussion. Councillor Javetkov.
So this Citizens for Safe Technology, do we have any actual information that there is a problem? Like I think about my own cell phone that I carry in my left pocket close to my heart for the last 20 years. And I guess it emits radiation apparently, I don't know, but a lot of these organizations come out of the woodwork and they're, you know, to me there has to be some credibility there before we react to something like that. Like I'm not in favor of starting to put regulations in place, you know, for a request like this. I need some proof or some actual, you know, evidence that there is a problem.
Councillor Schumer.
Yeah, and I can't get it to load now, but reading it last night, I was sort of under the impression that what they were searching or looking for was for there to be some consultation involved prior to installation, which I think is fair enough. You know, let the community know and then, you know, understand the concerns at that point. I'm not sure, I'm kind of in agreement with Councillor Javetkov that, you know, there are people out there that are concerned over a number of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's reality. It could be. I'm not the expert here, of course. But to me, it was the resolution at UBCM was around consultation. We all get the opportunity to consult when they're building a big tower like what's over by the liquor store, but what they were asking for is some consultation around these little micro ones that are just being put up on power poles, etc. And I'm in favor of, you know, having some putting it out for consultation. But as far as going as far to create regulations and putting into our zoning, etc., I don't know that I am in favor of that.
And so for me, when I read it, it was because we have no policy. I think to me it's one of those things you want to start to consider. The more that it advances, the aesthetics, how many you allow per property, and the density of that, and the public use of some of that. That's the 3 or 4 that I read. And public health was and safety was another concern. And I don't know enough about it, but to me, I just don't know enough about it to say whether we should restrict them or not. But I do agree with this whole thing about the density of the aesthetics. And if you had a whole slew of them installed in one particular property or one particular downtown area, then your aesthetics of your downtown properties could be affected by it. Duncan?
So through your worship, currently, and I think Kevin mentioned this, but I mean, we're looking at it on a building position as far as structural and engineered and attachment to buildings, and this is a bit of a shift from those freestanding towers that we're seeing, and now they're talking about you know, infrastructure being physically mounted on buildings, which is a little different. We are limited in what we can do, and I think it even points out in here that the only point in which we could refuse a permit is if it is a conflict with a bona fide municipal purpose, including reasons of public safety and health, which we would have to prove, as well as conflicting with existing infrastructure. So I know in the past, we've been told through legal and just working in some of these freestanding projects that we don't have a lot of influence, and that's why organizations like UBCM and FCM have taken some of these on, trying to change the regulation.
Councillor Parsons?
Yes, this is more intended for people who may be watching council in action. The documentation says thousands of independent scientific studies link the radio frequency radiation microcells emit to increase cancer risk, neurological disorders, and infertility. Even low levels of RF exposure over time have been linked to adverse effects on plants and insects, especially pollinators. As of October 2017, 235 scientists from 41 countries have signed the International EMF Scientists Appeal, urging world leaders to protect mankind and wildlife from the danger of EMFs and wireless technology. ISED says microcells are safe as long as they comply with Health Canada's Safety Code 6. Health Canada, however, continues to ignore the non-thermal effects of artificial electromagnetic frequencies, as well as the science which shows that exposure to these frequencies, even at levels lower than those deemed safe by Safety Code 6, cause potential biological harm. On September the 28th, 2014, over 50 Canadian physicians condemned Safety Code 6. On July the 9th, 2014, 53 scientists from 18 countries called on Health Canada to intervene to help avoid an emerging health crisis. I could go on and on. That's why I'm concerned. Obviously you'll have debate on all sides. I mean, there are even some people who still deny that there's a global, climate change. So I expect some opposition, but I think it's a concern that we should look into and see how we can protect our citizens, or if it's just consultation, these issues will be raised during the consultation process.
Thank you. Councillor Javeco?
Yeah, this is, it could possibly be a big issue, a lot more than what we could deal with at our level. And it should be referred to the UBCM, for a broad look at it. And maybe that's what we should be doing with this. I know these blogs, I've read blogs by people that are really articulate, and they can come up with all kinds of, evidence or perceived evidence. But I think back to the BC Hydro smart meters, it was the same type of thing. I mean, people came out of the woodwork, and these things were going to be the end of us all. And they've been installed and they're operating, and these kind of I call them blogs. I think that's what they are. You've got them on everything. So to me, I'll be voting against the motion. I think this should be something that's referred to UBCM so they can deal with it on a bigger perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Sheehan?
Yeah, so it was referred to UBCM. There was a resolution put forward to the membership of UBCM that we voted on it in September at the convention. And therefore be a resolve that AKBLG, which is an area association like our NCLGA, but down in the Kootenays area, request the UBCM petition relevant provincial and federal governments to mandate consultation with the land use authorities and the public regarding microcell transmitter siting within 100 meters of residences, schools, and hospitals. So it did go to UBCM. It did pass at UBCM, whether we all voted for it or not. And so they already will be dealing with it. They will be going to the provincial and federal jurisdictions to deal with the issue around mandating consultations. So after hearing from staff, I feel like we really shouldn't be messing with it until we get some information back from those, our higher levels of government around the issue.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilor Roger?
I was just gonna say, like, we have a provincial health authority, we have a federal health authority, and we have Northern Health. So I just think that we're a little bit out of bounds here, trying to regulate health concerns where we don't know what the people that are supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Further discussion? You ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's defeated. Thank you. So we're at 9 o'clock, or after 9 o'clock, and I want to move on to our delegation. And so we'll move to item 6, if we can. Our first delegation this morning. It's a pleasure to welcome back to our City Council, Mr. Joe Drago, Chair of the Board of Hockey Canada, and Mr. Randy Henderson, Chair of the Board for BC Hockey. Obviously, they're in attendance today. We kicked off yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon, the official launch of our World Under-17 Hockey Challenge again, co-hosting with Fort St. John, and so it's obviously a real pleasure to have Hockey Canada and BC Hockey back into Dawson Creek. And with that, I'll turn it over. And thank you both for coming into council again this morning.
Me? You want me to go first? Okay. Go ahead.
Oh,
We're like the bossy twins here.
Wrecking the place.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councilors. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I thank you very much for inviting us. In 2014, I was looking at the submissions for hosting various events for Hockey Canada on our world tournaments. And at the time, when I saw Dawson Creek, I really didn't even know where Dawson Creek was. You know, I come from Northern Ontario. We don't know too much about anything except with Northern Ontario. But 2015 brought me here. I had assigned myself as the Hockey Canada rep, mainly because of Barry Raynard telling me how wonderful the area was and that I should be here. So I came in 2015. And I knew after a couple of days in 2015 that I'd like to come back. And when the under 17 was going to be offered again, we certainly pushed how can we not consider Dawson Creek and Fort St. John after what we saw in 2015 to give it to them again, because customarily we don't normally go so to speak back to back in assigning events, but I knew that it would be bigger and better, and it certainly has. I don't want to speak too much about anything except Dawson Creek today, because I think in my experience here and seeing what is happening with you as the City Council and your involvement and your commitment, that's not really traditionally normal with the places that I go to. I mean, the councils are very receptive to come to the opening meeting and make you feel at home, but you don't really get to see them too much after that, and it's a rarity that they all come to the game, or some of them don't come to any games. But I look up here and see your two ladies parading around last night with the microphone and getting everybody riled up, and the mayor, we have to hold him down because he's so excited all the time. And I just think that's wonderful. So how can it not be successful? Your community is really solid. You are committed to your community. You're committed to the people. The people here are so beautiful. Wednesday night, I'm invited out to one of your citizens' homes for dinner. So, you know, that's never happened to me before. Usually I'm eating at McDonald's or A&W or some place like that. So I know Randy and I are going to really be subjected to a beautiful dinner. From what we hear, she's one of the best cooks in the area. So we're looking forward to that. But again, I just feel so comfortable walking. I don't sit down in the arena. I walk around. I like to talk to people, and everybody is so polite and pleasant and happy to see you, and very, very solid comments about what Hockey Canada and BC Hockey does for the community. I normally bring 100 pins with me when I go to an event. I'm already on 300 here, so I had to call the office to get another 100 to send up to us. And Randy's looking for another 100 from BC Hockey as well, so you can see what's happening. The Northwest Territories, last night we spent some time with those people, and they just couldn't say enough about the way they've been treated and how wonderful it was for their kids to be here. So we went in and gave all those kids pins, and they were the one in the elevator this morning. He said to me, "This is the best experience I've ever had." I said, "Well, now you have to go home and learn to be normal again." So, but anyway, I just want to say thank you. I can't say enough about what you've done and the feeling that I have about your community. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to be a part of, and it all stems from leadership. You're only as good as your leaders. And it's obvious here that you have strong leadership. You have a solid mayor and a great council, and that makes things what they are here. One of my favorite quotes, and I hope I can remember it now, I was thinking of it when I was coming in, was made by Henry Ford when he said, "Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success." I think Henry Ford would be very proud of Dawson Creek. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That always leaves me with very little to say when I get Joe to speak first. But Your Worship, councillors, on behalf of BC Hockey, I'm a Northerner, and I know you don't consider people from Prince George as really being true Northerners, but I am. I mean, anything from about Cache Creek up is considered north. Northern hospitality is something that in our provinces we're very proud of, and believe me, you folks have certainly served up a huge plateful of that this time. You've got to be so proud of your volunteers, your facilities, which are great, and what you were able to plan in this round for the World U17s of engagement with not only community members here in Dawson Creek, but the ones that, as Joe mentioned, came from the Northwest Territories. What we learned last night as well is that, well, gee, it's not that much further to go to Dawson Creek instead of Grand Prairie. So they're looking at a big shift in their tournament focus. So the long-term dividends are huge, and the experience that the players, the parents are getting at this event is going to be second to none. They're going to come away from here with very fond memories that are going to last them a lifetime. So on behalf of BC Hockey, I can't thank you folks enough for what you've done here.
So thank you both so much for coming back to Dawson Creek and helping celebrate this event in our community. And there have been so many, as you've mentioned, so many other activities and opportunities to engage in our community for our kids, community outside of just the U17, just the tournament. And we started to see that over the weekend. I can't talk about one or two of them because I'll start to lose it a little bit, but the dreams come true that Hockey Canada and BC Hockey, I think, are delivering. And I got the opportunity to go and see those kids yesterday morning being outfitted with hockey equipment. It was unbelievable. And to see those kids, it was like Christmas. And here's an example of how we benefit our community and the quality of life. So we just want to express our sincere appreciation, obviously, to you guys, because we know it doesn't happen. These opportunities for us to get it once was an incredible event for us, and to get it a second time was just unbelievable. And so we really sincerely appreciate the commitment you've made to us and allowing us to demonstrate we have the people to execute effectively and with success. And it'll be another great success for Hockey Canada, for BC Hockey, and for our communities and everybody that's involved in it. We don't do it without people and the sponsors. And we can't say enough about how strong the sponsor support has been as well. So We really appreciate it, and we want to thank you, and thank you for coming in again this morning. And it's great to see you, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the ring.
You may be sorry if we give it to you for life.
Well, somebody may be, but I
You made our mascara run.
Good thing you're not wearing mascara, right?
So our next delegation this morning, 6.2, we have Joanna is in for Success by 6, and Children First. And we're going to do an International Children's Day proclamation, and Joanna's going to do, I got to turn this on, I think. So let's, if we can, we'll do the proclamation first. Good morning, good morning. Welcome.
How are you?
Yeah, I'll be back.
That's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, it's really tough.
I should have had something prepared.
So whereas on March 19th, 1993, the Government of Canada proclaimed November 20th as National Child Day to commemorate two historic events for children: the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Child in 1959, and the UN adoption of the Convention of the Rights of the Child in 1989. And whereas it is a day to remember that children need love and respect to grow to their full potential, and whereas it is a day to marvel at their uniqueness and all they have to offer, and whereas it is a day to celebrate the family and think about how adults affect the development of children close to them, and whereas this year National Child Day celebrates that children have the right to learn about and enjoy their own culture, and whereas many individuals, organizations, and municipalities throughout British Columbia have, since 1993, organized events in celebration of National Child Day. Now therefore I do hereby proclaim November 20th as National Child Day in Dawson Creek.
Yay.
So thank you, Joanna. And great. Thank you. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I just want to say on November 20th, we are hosting our Children's Festival that is going to be at the Dawson Creek Mall, and it's in celebration of National Child Day. And we really invite everybody to come down because it's a big partnership of all of our community service providers. The City of Dawson Creek's one of our partners as well. And it's a big event where we try to celebrate the children, have service providers available for parents so that they can answer questions if parents have questions on the development of their children, making it an easy kind of one-stop shop, plus have lots of fun. And the Dawson Creek Mall is wow. I have to say they're awesome to work with. So that's also, speaking of local and all the good things we have, they've been a really great partner as well. So thank you very much. I know you guys are in council that day, so hope to see you, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Grab.
6.3, we have Colleen Burke and David Johnson in for the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living regarding an invitation to the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disability Film Festival and 60th Anniversary Celebration. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Have you here.
Thank you for having us. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Colleen Burke, and the hat I have on today is from Dawson Creek Society for Community Living. And I'm here because, funny enough, as nervous as I am, I was the one that was the least nervous to come and talk in front of the mic this morning. So,
You're nervous?
I'm a little nervous. Are you shocked?
Yes.
David's a pro.
I'm a pro at
David's
this,
a
so.
pro, so we won't take up too much of your time. But David, who are you here with today?
I'm here.
BC People's
BC People's First. We're partnering with the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living to put on this United Nations International Day for Persons with Disability Film Festival and 60th Anniversary Celebration. That's going to happen December 3rd at the Calvin Crook Center.
So please mark it on your calendar.
And that's at 2 o'clock.
Yes. The opportunity to host it in Dawson Creek came to us from Inclusion BC and, I have it on my phone, sorry, I don't want to miss anything up. BC Self Advocacy Foundation.
And I'm on the board of BC Self Advocacy Foundation and involved, and I'm I represent them here today too. So I wear 2 different hats here, guys.
2 different hats today. You're lucky. So if you guys would put it on your calendars, we'd love it if you could attend. There might even also be an opportunity for someone to speak if you were so inclined. But we're going to have some refreshments and then also present the film. And then there'll be a food drive as well. So admission will be by donation to local food banks. Did I miss anything? BC People's First, BC Self-Advocacy Foundation, United Nations International Day of Persons with Disability, Inclusion BC, Dawson Creek Society for Community Living. I think that was everybody, and unfortunately I was supposed to have a really nice speech prepared for me and a media release and invitations and posters, and they're still in the mail, so I did the best I could.
You guys did a great job. Certainly Sunday, December 3rd, we'll make sure to have that notification for the council, and
I might as well give you my regrets. I will not be at that thing. I will be at the big one that the BC Self-Advocacy Foundation does in Vancouver.
Yeah. There's, I think, 4 locations chosen in BC, and Dawson Creek was chosen as the northern location.
But see, because I'm on the board, we do the big one in Vancouver, in the big city, you know. So I will not be here to represent the People's First at this one, so my girlfriend's going on my behalf.
Excellent.
well, we absolutely will have it on our calendar, and absolutely will be there as long as we've got the ability and clarity.
Unless
on
you're
our
in
calendar.
Vancouver?
Unless I'm in Vancouver, David, that's a
And
David, don't be getting lost in Vancouver. It's a really,
Hey,
city
Hey,
after
I
all.
can't be in. I have 3 different things to go to. 2 things in Vancouver. I can't be everywhere, you know. So that's
Well,
the way it goes.
David, we're in good hands with you in Vancouver, so thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
and we look forward to seeing you on December 3rd.
Awesome.
All right,
Have a nice
thank you,
day.
thank you, David.
Keep up the good work, buddy.
I always do.
Our next delegation, item 6.4, we have Rick and Judy Lopez, Oxford residents and attendants, regarding the request for 1521 and 1525, 113. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judy.
Good morning.
Mayor Bumstead and councilors. I thank you very much for taking a few minutes to listen to us this morning. Regarding the utility laneway that, you know, sometimes is we talked about as a walkway. A walkway that was never ever used as a walkway. I've talked to residents that have been there 50 years and never seen anyone ever go through that area. And also, it doesn't matter where you start because it's in the middle of a block and ends in the middle of a block. The one thing the children from Trombley got figured out, which is the shortest way to school, and it's always up 15th Street and then taking a shortcut right across the park and into the schools. And and so residents in that area have taken upon themselves to look after a part of that property, cut the grass, no different than what residents in where we around town, you see boulevards where people are out cutting the grass and taking proud the connection to their community. Or over in Willowbrook, they cut the grass in around by the creek and other areas, you know, because they're proud of where they live, and they want to try and keep it looking nice, and it extends more than just their property. And the city hasn't taken any initiative to do anything over a period of 50 years, and so we'd like to see, you know, something done. You know, the proposal, you know, was given back to us here regarding the purchase of the property, which is only 10 feet wide. It cannot be ever built on or utilized or covered over for anything because it has utilities going through it, except for where Mr. Cox lives. There's no utilities there. Everything else either has underground power or just sewer. underneath it. The proposal that was given to us was saying that the costs are $4,600, just not including the purchase of the land, which is about is sort of like you going and buying a used car in the dealership saying to you, well, for the document fees and everything on our part is going to become equal to the cost of the property. You're not going to buy a car if your documentation fee is equal to the cost of the car, and this is essentially what's coming back to us here. I've had an appraiser. I bought property this year, commercial property in town, and you know, you're saying $500. I had a friend here turn around just this year, just a few months ago, get an appraisal for property for $350. Here's $500 you're charging for, you know, coming back to us, where for the appraisal of a piece of land that has nothing in it. He's got you know, a newer house, you know, a 2000 house sitting on this property, and he only pays $350. So something's really amiss here, you know, when coming back to some of these figures. Going on, you're saying in 2028 that you would like to turn around, spend $65,000. I would say that you're more likely well over $100,000, the kind with inflation coming to 2028. Even going at 65,000, that's, you know, 65 residents property for tax for 1 year, just to redo a walkway that starts in the middle of nowhere, goes to nowhere, is a shortcut for nowhere, and it has no connection to 17th Street or 15th Street. If you turn around and want to go to up here to something that may be built over on 17th Street, you're going to go up 115th, or you're going to go right in through 113th. You're not going to turn around and take this as a walkway at any point in time. It's totally illogical. So my proposal to you, and going back here, because the costs for documentation, legal fees, and everything is so much, is to think about a 20-year lease of this property, and then it would be solved. People can turn around and look after this area. Something to think about in other parts of town as well. And at least you have some revenue coming in. And you know, I'm a businessman, and the idea is to go after the revenue in a reasonable way. You're not going to ever make a sale at unsubstantiated cost. So I would like you to think about that in something that could be done in other parts of town, not just this part. Otherwise, that you're going to have people that will just simply walk away and do nothing, and you'll have to look after it. The hospital, it in the past has been sued for people walking a shortcut across their property, across the grass, and they settled out of court for 5-figure sums. And leaving this and trying to operate it and not maintaining it, which goes through back alleys, mud, and everything, seems totally ludicrous in my mind. You know, we want to have a beautiful looking community that operates and configures and it would substantiate itself for long term. And I think that's what every resident in town wants to see, something that's we look after the dollars first and foremost, and we want to have a beautiful community. And I think that's what anyone would like to see in this area. So I'll leave that with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Councilor Rob.
Yeah, just to be clear, so you're proposing not to buy it, but you're proposing to lease it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the cost that you come back to us, for just the cost to do the legal and all the surveying and everything else, it's just totally ludicrous in cost. It's equal to the cost of what the property is worth.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm just giving you another option here because it just seems a no-go, you know, in my point. Everyone will just turn away. And
Councillor Parsons?
So Rick, what do you see as being the advantages to you of leasing rather than the status quo?
no. Really, there's almost no advantage whatsoever than possibly put a fence up on the one side because we've had so many problems with the weeds and everything. They never do anything to, you know, look after that property, which is such a difference from the past person that maintained and looked after it. And other than that, like there, you know, there's no advantage for anyone, you know, to turn around and you know, look, you know, have that property, you know, because they're essentially looking after your property for free, and we've been doing that for 40 years. You know, and the neighbor behind us and the other neighbors have all got together and they looked after it. No different than what you see people cutting the boulevard in 116th or the lawns in other areas, and because they just want to have a beautiful area in Dawson Creek. You know, when I go for a walk, I pick up cans and stuff that people throw out of their vehicles just because I want to have a beautiful community, and I think it's sort of disgusting that people don't take more onus.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions for Rick or Judy? So thank you so much. We'll, obviously we've got it on our agenda and we'll be dealing with it further, but we appreciate you taking the time and coming in this morning to present to council on an item, obviously it's very important to you guys personally, and so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is 6.5. Our next delegation is Joyce Lee from Tourism Dawson Creek and Paul Davey from the Software Emporium and Wanda Mondrell from the Chamber of Commerce are in attendance this morning to talk about the shop. And Paul, this morning.
Kathleen's here from Wanda.
Good morning. I got it. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
You got your mic on?
Do I need the mic?
Well, yeah.
Well, you got it.
Why are you wearing it?
I don't think I'm doing anything. I think it's these guys that get to do something. I know. You can talk into my mic.
Hello.
Stand close to her. Here, I'll
Good morning, Mayor Bumstead.
Good morning.
Councilors. Again, I don't know if we're ready for it, but Christmas is coming. Of course, I see everybody's wearing our poppies today, so we do have Remembrance Day coming up this Saturday. But after that, it's going to be all systems go for Christmas in Dawson Creek. And it is a shop local. That's okay. It is.
I was gonna be like, stand forward. Trying to get a picture, and she's like, hiding.
It is a shop local initiative, and I just want to, Melanie gave me a great list here, and I just want to kind of tell you some of the benefits to the community. So from our 2016 results from this initiative, we had approximately 35 businesses participating in it. And they were each given 200 tickets to hand out to people that spent $40 or more in their businesses. Every one of those businesses were given 10 complimentary tickets to provide people that maybe weren't able to spend $40 per visit. And so out of that, we had 1,518 tickets of over $40 spent, 119 tickets were given out and received for individuals riding the bus and idle this week that we're going to be talking about a little bit later, and 76 complimentary tickets were handed out to the community. So in total last year, we had 1,713 tickets And if you do the average, so that was a minimum of $40, that the money that was, the economic development money that was kept in Dawson Creek from this initiative was over $60,000. So that is really, I think, quite significant. And we're ready to do it again this year. I want to talk a little bit about the poster here. We don't have the handbooks ready, but you probably remember from last year we had the holiday handbooks, and we're working on them right now. They're just in the design stage. We printed and handed out 2,000 of these handbooks last year. Tourism Dawson Creek, who's partnering with Sustainable Dawson Creek and the City of Dawson Creek, we took these handbooks to all of our businesses and dropped them off at our restaurants, hotels, businesses downtown, and then plus we handed a whole bunch of them, hundreds of them out at the tree light up, which is coming up shortly as well. So we're going to be doing that again today. This is going to be the front cover. There's lots going on, so yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Kathleen, do you have?
So I would just say, as usual, vocal for local, we like to say. So we know that for a lot of small businesses, Christmas can be that one opportunity for them to show up in the black for the year. So it's really important that we support our local content and make sure to take care of our businesses. So please do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm here on behalf of BC Transit, and we really support the idle list program. And how we do that is when we have to stop the bus for a long period of time, we stop the bus for, we let it run for 3 minutes, and then we stop it for 5 minutes, and then we restart it after that. So we really believe in that idle list program, so that's what we do to support it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, so the idle list, if council agrees to providing it this year, we're hoping that it runs from the 18th to the 24th of the year, so we'll have lots of ridership again, taking advantage of free busing in Dawson.
To go shopping.
To go shopping and spend their money locally.
We're getting, honestly, we've got so much positive support right now from the local business community, and we really need to have our community understand how important those local businesses are to our community and building that foundation of our community of local business, local industry, local jobs. And the more we can all do that to help support our local, the stronger our community is. And so we certainly appreciate this message that you guys are bringing forward, and obviously the Chamber and Transit and all of you, to help support our local businesses and shop local and help build our community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the idle list, obviously, is a great segue into our next proclamation and delegation this morning. And it is the proclamation for our Idle Less Week. And so it's my pleasure this morning to be able to read the proclamation. Whereas protecting our airshed is a shared responsibility whereby individuals can make a significant and sustainable difference by idling less, choosing alternative transportation, and adopting an attitude that values clean air as a finite resource. And whereas toxic gases generated by vehicle exhaust are harmful to human health and air quality and contribute to the greenhouse gas effect. Furthermore, vehicle exhaust contains fine particulate matter that through frequent exposure can lead to respiratory diseases and chronic illness, with children most commonly exposed. And whereas even on a cold, wintry days, vehicle engines require 3 minutes or less of idling. Now therefore I do hereby proclaim November 18th to 24th, 2017 as Idle Less Week in Dawson Creek, and encourage all residents to take a proactive role in minimizing harmful health and environmental impacts of excessive vehicle idling. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, and there's a proclamation on behalf of the residents and City of Dawson Creek, and we encourage everyone to idle less during November 18th to the 24th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ready? It drives me crazy. Stop and shut.
That's what,
Is yours?
And I guess that's all our delegations this morning.
See,
Yeah,
I told you.
So our next delegation, and I'm going to shut my mic off, but so it's my pleasure this morning to introduce and welcome Katie Underhill from TransCanada, who's going to give us an update on the Tower Birch expansion project and the completion of.
Yeah, shut your mic off so no one can hear the rude comments you make. Yeah. Exactly.
You know, I might tell a little story before Katie begins. And
Sadie,
it goes
the other
back
one.
Almost 2 years ago, it was January of, I think, 2016. Community was in a whole different world at that point. It was quiet, people and business and industry and hotels and restaurants. Everybody was suffering from the downturn and what was happening in our community. And I remember Cole Thompson was the TransCanada representative, and Lisa Osborne came in and gave an update on the Tower Birch project, this huge project that was coming in to our area and our community. And at that time, the commitment was from TransCanada that we're going to come into your community. It's a big project. We're going to be in here for 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 months during construction. And we're not going to put our workers in a camp. We're going to be in your community, and we're going to be doing what we can to support it. And it spurred a whole bunch of, from my perspective anyway, it was like a kind of that light that was kind of starting to begin to show that things were going to start to turn around for our community and our business community. And certainly this summer it was unbelievable how it did. And all of the work that I think we tried to do with TransCanada has been a great sponsor and a partner in our community with U17 and all the different things that we've done in the kind of community. We really have demonstrated that to our community. So I really appreciate Katie coming in this morning and giving us an update on the completion of Tower Birch, how important it has been. And thank you for coming this morning, and thank you to TransCanada.
No, well, Your Worship and Council, thank you so much for having me this morning. I appreciate it, and I know it is an insanely busy week for everybody, so I really appreciate your time during all this craziness. I think everyone has the presentation. Is that right? Okay, sounds good. I can wait too. I don't know what's easiest. Yes, I know all of you, but I'm Katie Underhill again. I'm the community relations representative for TransCanada in Northeast BC. So I'm certain. Oh, thank you so much. Is mine beautiful? I'm so proud to be the representative to TransCanada in this area, and I say I have the most coveted job in the entire company, maybe even more so than the CEO, because I get to work in this area with all you wonderful people, and you know, we're one of the only areas that's building projects right now, right? So we're really lucky in that sense. So most of our update today is going to be, oh no, am I not doing it right? Is it? Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. So most of my update today is going to be about Tower Birch, but I wanted to give a bit of an update just about some of the other projects we've had and some of the things you may have heard about TransCanada in the news lately, just to, we'll set our bases now. So we currently have, I'll say, 3 projects kind of wrapping up or underway. I'll talk about the NGTL projects, so those are the ones just focused in Northeast BC in a couple slides, but I wanted to touch on our LNG projects first. There's been a lot of news and kind of chatter about what's going on there. So the PRGT project, that's that purple line, wouldn't have had as much of an impact on Dawson Creek, but I'm sure everybody heard that was the Pacific Northwest LNG pipeline or project. It would connect to PNW LNG, and in July this year they opted to not continue with that project, with the LNG project. So you know, what does that mean for us? Right now we're just kind of taking a look at what exactly that does mean, and sort of doing a bit of a review of, you know, what are some other potential options for that project, right? We have a 900-kilometer project that is fully permitted. There might be other options for it, right? But as of right this second, no work is continuing on that guy. The Coastal GasLink project is the green one, and that's the one that starts very near here to Dawson Creek. That guy is, so as you know, very closely tied to the schedule for LNG Canada. And right now we're sort of in a process of waiting for LNG Canada to make a final investment decision. But they've indicated several times over the past several months even that they think this is a viable project. It's not a question of if, but when they're going to take a final investment decision. And we're still optimistic that we'll see something sort of in the next year in mid to late 2018. So looking at projects in the south piece, I'll kind of give you a bit of an update on everything we've done this last year in this area here. So very beginning of the year, we constructed and put into service the Dawson Creek receipt meter station, which is kind of that bottom left guy. That was a standalone meter station, not included in any other program or anything like that, but was another vital piece to adding a customer connection onto our NGTL system. So that guy was done and dusted pretty quickly at the beginning of the year. On the Alberta side of the border, we had the NGTL 20 system expansion, the Bear Canyon section project, so you can kind of see that on the right side of the screen there. Even though it was an Alberta project, we had our crew staying in Dawson Creek, again, in hotels. So it was a bit touch and go in terms of where we were going to put everybody for a little while, but I think it worked out. Mostly everyone had a room to sleep in, so that was good. And it was I mean, for me working in BC, it was great to see some of our Alberta projects having a positive benefit to Dawson Creek on the BC side, so that was wonderful. Then we get to Tower Birch, my baby. So that one, I'm proud to say we just went into service on November 1st was the last piece of that project to go into service, other than one meter station is about another week or so away. But for the most part, that project is wrapped up. And we were so excited, as Mayor Bumstead said, we were here almost 2 years ago talking about it, and that 2 years really flew by pretty quickly, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the project later on, but yeah, we were excited to have it done on time, so that was great. Tying into that were some of the meter stations I had spoken about. So like I said, all except for one are done, and that last one should be in service in the next week. This is a bit of a humble brag slide, so please don't pay too much attention to it, but we just we put this slide up in March when we had presented with our contractors at the Calvin Crook Center. We put this slide up, and we just wanted to demonstrate that we hit all of those milestones pretty close to where we thought they'd be. So win for us. That doesn't often happen in pipeline construction, so we were pretty excited.
If I can just jump in, I just wanted to, and I don't know if I've told you this or not, but we just, within the last month, and at the very beginning of that slide where you talked about the NEB and that initial process of getting the permitting, council just had the director of National Energy Board here, and we spent an hour or so with Brian Martin, and it was so informative to get that understanding of the permitting process and National Energy Board role interjurisdictionally when a project like Tower Birch would go through that. So we found it very informative, and it was very worthwhile.
Good.
And so I just wanted to mention that because you see that at the very beginning of your slide in terms of the early works.
Yep. You got it.
Through NEB.
And it is, and I think it's in BC in particular, we're not as used to that NEB process. But I think with the exception of Coastal GasLink, all the projects that TransCanada has coming up in the area at least will be NEB regulated because they tie into that NGTL system, which is cross-border. So that's kind of something that I think we're trying to make an effort in as well is educating on that NEB process, because it is different, and it's a bit of a behemoth of a process, right? There's just lots of different things to navigate. So that's something that we'll keep in mind as well. I appreciate that. So just a couple Tower Birch by the numbers kind of things. So we were in construction for a total of 7 months, from about April to like I said, November. So the actual construction, so the 2 months of that were some of that early work stuff I was talking about, so it was clearing and things like that. Actual construction was about 5 months. And a caveat to that, because we got snow up here, I shouldn't say early, it's like you never know when you're going to get snow, but earlier than we had hoped for. We'll be doing a little bit of cleanup of ground birch in the spring. So everything is backfilled, but some of that reclamation stuff, I think you were asking about that, Mayor Bumstead, some of that reclamation stuff will be taking place in the spring once everything's thawed out again. So, but 7 months this year. We completed 4 successful HDDs, which is another feat in the industry these days. So HDD is the horizontal directional drill. So we did these HDDs at 4 locations, the Kiskatinaw, Unnamed Creek, and those 2 were on the Tower Lake section, that north-south piece. And then on the Ground Birch section, we did an HDD of the Poos-Koopy and Highway 97. So those were all really big drills that we were really excited to have successful completion on all 4.
Can I just tell a little story about one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was the Kiskatinaw.
Yeah.
And it was right at the beginning of the project that TransCanada got delayed because of weather and permitting. And
yeah.
So the clearing, and one of the things about getting the clearing work done is because of the nesting and all of those things that really are a key component of a project that they really have to pay attention to. And as they were getting ready, I think for the
I see where you're going with
drill,
this, yeah.
along they stumble a groundhog nest.
It wasn't even a nest, and I can't remember the kind of bird. It's a bird and it's endangered, and I kind of say it's no wonder it's endangered. It doesn't build a nest, and it just lays an egg in the middle of a field, basically. And it is endangered, and the purpose of it apparently is so the nest doesn't attract attention, but it was right in the middle of our HDD pad, so we had to wait for that bird to fledge before we could get started on that. So again,
it was so impressive to me, because you realize how important and the financial impacts of the delay, but they permitting process, and TransCanada then had to delay the drilling process of that important aspect of the pipeline because of that egg.
Yep, it's true. Never a dull moment. Yeah, never a dull moment. This next data is something that we're proud of. So we talked about the NEB process, but as we're in BC, we also go through the BC EAO process as well. One of our EAO conditions on this project was that we needed to report to or develop a health and medical services plan and report to Northern Health on that. And we were one of the first projects in BC to do that. So we had 6 monthly update calls with Northern Health. They went extremely well. They were really happy with the mitigations that we put in place and some of the plans we had to minimize impact on the community and the community's health services. So that was sort of a pilot for us and for Northern Health, but we were really pleased with the working relationship we had. We had 1,000 people was sort of our peak workforce. That was about a week or 2 in early August. We had that equated to over 730,000 man-hours in total and over 3 million kilometers driven. And that was just by our contractors. That doesn't include subcontractors as well. So a lot of work on the project. Over 300 engagements, and that was just with stakeholders such as yourselves and our First Nations contacts as well. Doesn't include any of the engagement we did with our 80 landowners on the project. So 90% of Tower Birch was landowner, and so we had lots of engagement with those 80 folks as well. Then finally, we went into service on Tower Lake on October 1st, just as Encana asked for, and we went into service on Ground Birch on November 1st. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about our projects in the north piece. May at first glance appear that they don't apply to you as much, but there is a connection, and I just want to bring it to your attention sort of in advance of what we're about to go through here. So this is a map of the North Montney Mainline project, proposed quite a few years ago, I think 2013 or 2014, has gone through a couple hurdles, but it's a $1.4 billion project, was initially 301 kilometers, has now been scaled down to 206 kilometers. So how this applies to Dawson Creek, as you can see, it starts sort of near the Pink Mountain area and ends sort of just east of Hudson's Hope. But there is one compressor station, so the Ground Birch compressor station, that's associated with that. We're not too sure what the housing strategy looks, or the accommodation strategy looks like at that yet. But one option is that we might have some of the people, some of the crews working on that compressor station staying in Dawson Creek. So it could be around 100-ish people. So just something that we wanted to bring to your attention and flag as a possible chance where you'd see people coming into the community. An update on that, though, one of the conditions of North Montney is that Condition 4 stated that we couldn't start construction of the project until Pacific Northwest LNG made an FID. Obviously, that's not going to happen anymore. So we filed a variance with the National Energy Board in March, I think. In March, basically to have that condition removed. We went through a bit of a public comment period, and the board has now made a decision that that's going to go to a hearing. So this will be our second hearing on the project. It's scheduled for the end of January, I think. We have a secure hearing date, and then hopefully the board will make a decision on if that can proceed in the April 2018 timeframe, and then we'd be like gangbusters starting construction on that project as quickly as we could to try to salvage some of the construction season. So once we have a little bit more information on that and how it might impact Dawson Creek, I'll come back and I'll talk to you guys about it again. But just wanted to flag that. It seems far away. It seems like that's all, Fort St. John North piece, but there is a potential touch point for Dawson Creek as well. And whoopsies. Oh, I went too far. And always, I think, the number one thing we're talking about going into North Montney or coming off of Tower Birch or whatever is local capacity and local contracting and the role that we play in that. I greatly regret that we weren't able to provide local contracting numbers to you today. We are reporting, one of our conditions was that we have to report to the NEB on that local spend. So as the project's wrapping up, we're just pulling those numbers together from all of our different contractors. But once we have that, I'll be sure to share that information with you all as well. What exactly did that local spend look like in Dawson Creek for Tower Birch? But we continue to collect local vendor information. And just wanted to highlight in March of this year, right after we brought on our prime contractors, we had an open house at the Calvin Crook Center. Mayor Bumstead was there. I think a few of you attended. We had over 200 people come out to meet our prime contractors. It was a gigantic open house. I still think it sets the record for biggest Trans-Canada open house to date. But it just showed, we sent the invite out through Kathleen at the Chamber. We sent it out to our local vendor list and just showed how much, even though things are so busy in Dawson Creek, it just really showed the appetite that the community has to get involved in these projects and participate. So we were really excited to see that many people, and we make that commitment. We'll continue to do that going forward. That was a real success. So. And then last thing, kind of going into the end of the year, just a bit of a benefits wrap up of things that we've sort of been involved in. A lot of these are, Northeast or PRRD focused, but there were a few I kind of wanted to highlight that are specific to Dawson Creek. So in terms of the taxes for the area, with Tower Birch going into service, it says $6 million. That will be including North Montney, but Tower Birch will generate $1.3 million annually in property taxes just from that one project. To date, we've invested over $3 million in skills training and education initiatives in BC. Over 300,000 of that went right here to Northern Lights College in Dawson Creek, and so that was with different bursaries and with the welding booths at the new trades training facility and things like that. So really proud of that number and proud to be investing in skills training right here in Dawson Creek. A couple community investment initiatives that we participated in the last year, a few things in Fort St. John and the North Peace, but here in Dawson Creek, the kindness meter is always. We're really excited about that initiative. The under 17 World Hockey Tournament that we have, or challenge, that was going on right now, and we also just announced a partnership with the Devereaux School. We're going to be helping them to purchase some snowshoes for their outdoor school program. So a few things going on in Dawson Creek, and we continue to receive requests for funding all the time, and there's so many great initiatives in this community, so we're pretty proud to be a part of that.
And you didn't give us enough money for the kindness.
No, we're getting some pretty good pretty good leverage from that one, I will say. Yeah, it's either a really bad deal for you or a really good deal for us, or both maybe. So yeah, that's kind of all we had to present on today. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has anything they'd like to know. But
Questions for anyone?
Nada.
So,
Katie, thank you. Obviously,
Yes.
support from you guys in terms of the message always has been with this local hire and local, and we know we work on that constantly, and but also the added benefits of U17 and kindness meters and all help with, and really want to express our appreciation to you and TransCanada for doing that, and we'll see you at the rink.
You will see us at the rink. I'll be there all week.
Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you so much, you guys. Thanks.
So we'll take a 7-minute recess.
Cheryl.
Back to order, and back into our agenda on, we finished off with item 5.4, so we'll go to 5.5 before our delegations, and it's a letter from Tamara Zimmer, Board Chair from School District 59, with regards to an adjustment of their electoral areas. Councillor Parslow?
Receive for information.
Receive for information. Councillor Schumann, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Our next item is item 7.1 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding our walkways policy. Councillor Javetkov?
I'll make a motion that we have staff send.
To deal with
Sorry,
something.
through your
Oh, sorry,
worship.
Brenda.
We do have a motion that is on the floor.
Oh, right, we do have one that we have to bring forward because it was tabled until after today as a result of the delegation. And that motion is that the letter from Rick and Judy Lokay regarding the request of the waiver of our walkway policy be received, and further that the walkway policy be waived regarding the request to purchase the walkway. And so that was their original motion that we had done. So, Councillor Rogers.
I believe you affirmed that you just want to lease it now.
Yeah, but we have to deal with this motion. Councillor Parslow?
I move that we defeat this motion.
So we have the motion on the floor, now we just have to bring it back to the table?
Yeah.
So, question.
Question's been called on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's defeated, and so now we can have the motion. Councillor Javetkov.
So now I can make my motion, Brenda?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that administration send letters out to the residents around there to see if they object to us leasing those walkways. And if we get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McFadden. Discussion, go ahead.
So, I've never considered leasing it before, but that would be a way to cover off the people that have a burning desire to retain this land, and people like myself that are concerned about the potential cost of holding on to it. If we lease it and the people, you know, the adjacent people are willing to pay a lease fee, and hopefully it would be very nominal, it's a way to keep the land and have it looked after at no cost to the city, but actually some revenue.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann, then Councillor Rogers.
So I would support that, but I would actually like the lease to be in effect from now until 2028, when we are wanting to do something with it. So Mr. Lokay suggested a 20-year lease, but I would rather support a lease agreement with whomever until such a time as we're going to do something with it, which is in the plan for 2028. So if we could throw that date in there, I would support that.
Well, a 10-year lease, but I mean, if you investigate the opportunity for leasing it first, and then we could design a lease, you know, a 10-year lease with an opportunity to extend it at the time if that's, you know, what council wanted, eh?
Okay. Councillor Rogers and Councillor Wilbur.
Your Worship, maybe staff can help us out here, but we've already leased property out. We've already leased the walkway out to the Apocalyptic Church just off of 8th Street for their parking lot. So we've already done this before, and I believe that it was done for $1. We've leased it for $1. Could I ask staff if
sure.
close on that?
So through your worship, we have leased land out before. We have a number of properties. Kevin, are you familiar with the church lease? Or Brenda?
Through your worship, yes, I remember doing, I can't remember the actual amount, but I remember going through the motion and the lease agreement and council on that, because there is a parcel of land next to the church that they use for parking, which is actually, I believe, part of our 7th Street right of way, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyways, we have done that, so we could look.
So the motion is that we ask administration to bring back the consideration around preparing a lease for this property. Councillor Wilbur, did you want to speak?
Yeah, so then what comes to my mind is that's only one section of a walkway system. So would we, I don't know if it's to staff or maybe to Mr. Javetkov, what do we do then about identifying the rest of that walkway that is already fenced in by property owners along that way? Are we including some notification to those people that, it doesn't seem right to me to lease one section of it and then leave other property owners that have actually fenced in that other portion of the walkway and are utilizing it as their own, but really it's city property. It's a conundrum, so I'm not really sure what the answer is, but maybe staff can help with that, or.
It's a trespass.
So I'm just, if I can ask Duncan if you can.
So through your worship, the lease idea is a new idea. It does retains the city's ownership of that land. It provides us an opportunity to develop in the future. It does address the public feedback piece as well.
Exactly.
The recommendation would be, though, if you're going to open up this segment of it, if you're going to lease this segment of it, that you address the remaining corridor, and that could be provided in the report in where those landowners are as far as leasing that property. As far as public feedback as well, we could bring all of that back in a report if that's what council would like to do.
That would satisfy me. That's just my concern.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov and Councillor
So that'd be that 2-block portion from 113th to 115th.
Correct.
Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, this is a question to staff. This has been asserted that this is a trail to nowhere. It's been also asserted that this is not used. So why are we looking at, if those assertions are true, I'd like to comment about that, but secondly, why are we developing with gravel, etc., something that is not used, if the assertions are true? I mean, I'm talking about the 2028 statement in this report.
Mm-hmm.
Duncan?
So through your worship, I don't believe that the residents are aware that this is a public transportation route, and through this process we're going to make them aware. And if at that point they are not concerned or interested in utilizing this, that information will come back to council, and we can readjust our financial plan at that time as well.
Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I think that the reasons that this is not utilized as a public walkway is, first of all, there's people with fences through it and sheds on it, et cetera, et cetera. It appears to be private land. There's no signage. It's not anywhere on our maps. It's not developed really as anything yet. And with all of the trespasses that are upon it now, it looks like private land. And so a small child or a person looking to take a shortcut on a public walkway is not going to see it as such. And so in 2028, when we have the plans to do some work to it to make it a walkway, I'm sure we will include signage and remove all the trespasses that are upon it now, so that people will recognize it as a public walkway instead of private property that it looks like now.
Councillor Parslow?
So if this walkway is riddled with trespasses, I guess what Councillor Ruben was talking about there, are we prepared to lease it to everybody else? And how would that sort of move us forward to this being an actual walkway? I mean, are we not getting ourselves into a bit of a hole? by facilitating the leasing of these properties and then maybe the further development? Are we going to be prepared to have people move their sheds and fences and all that stuff that get maybe more permanent as we've... I mean, we have to be clear about our intention to pave or whatever it is, gravel this and open it up. I'm just wondering if we're not getting ourselves into a bit of a mess.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I see a lease agreement with these people making it clear that we do have plans for this walkway. Being that it is a utility corridor as well, I mean, these trespasses really aren't or shouldn't be in the first place. I think that if we put forward a lease agreement with stipulations on permanency of infrastructure, i.e., don't be building something you're not prepared to move away in 10 years, those kind of parameters around this lease, I think it would work. To me, it's like a win-win situation. Yes, you can use this land for this 10-year period until we intend to develop it, and here's the stipulations. You don't be paving it or building, permanent structures, et cetera, that you're not going to be prepared to move in 10 years.
Councillor Javetkov and then Duncan.
Yeah, the other thing is, it's been used for 50 years illegally. We're still liable because it's our land. I mean, if something happened on there, we would be involved. This way it sort of legalizes it. It would make the leaseholder responsible, and it's just legalizing this trespass basically, but leaving it open through the wording of the lease for us to have access to anything subsurface and the option of doing something in 10 years. I think it's a good solution.
Duncan and then Charlie.
So, through your worship, the current motion just addresses this one walkway. If council is proceeding down this road and would like to address the other walkways within there and approaching the homeowners or adjacent homeowners to lease those as well, we would need direction.
So, thank you. And so I've got a couple of speakers that I just want to...
So what walkways, what are you talking about?
Sorry, the other segments of the walkway, not just the presentation today, but the connection from 113th to 115th.
Okay, well, this does include, like I mentioned here 10 minutes ago, from 113th to 115th. There's 2 blocks, 2 sections in there. So it goes from 113th to 114th, and then from 114th to 115th. And all of that should be included in this because it's all the same walkway.
Okay, so I got Councillor Parslow and then I have Councillor Wilbur.
Yeah, just being a bit of a devil's advocate here, but so if this is going to be a 10-year lease, and I appreciate the people looking for a win-win, I always like that if possible, but we need to think about implications. This is just what I'm doing here. So do you think if this is a 10-year lease and we are reaffirming our intention to gravel or pave whatever we do there in 2028, which is later on in another motion, I think, do you think, I don't know if Mr. Loki would want to fence something in for something less than maybe a 10-year period. He may do, but the question is if a child chooses to go over the fence and hurts himself or herself, who's liable? Would the city still have that liability? So is it wise to put a whole bunch of things that might encourage, inquisitive boys or girls to explore, etc.? Whose liability is it? Is it still the city's? Is it the leaseor or is it the leaseholder?
Duncan?
So through your worship, right now we're probably more exposed where we're allowing infrastructure on our property liability-wise. Once we form a lease agreement, we would require that they take on that exposure.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur and then Councillor Schmidt.
Thank you. Well, that answered one of my questions. I just wanted to reaffirm, like, we went and had a very extensive master transportation plan done. And I think as we move forward, we're going to find more trespasses or encroachments or whatever we want to call them. But the reality is we have a plan and we need to pay heed to that plan and be planning for the future. So there is a walkway system from 13th that takes you across Ravine Drive and then into the old Grandview School area, and because it's there, it's actually used a lot. I mean, it doesn't have to be gravelled or paved because just the foot traffic itself has hardened the ground and it's a well-used path. And I think that if we look into the future at 2028 and open this path up, I think we'll find that that neighborhood will use it as a transportation system. It's a safe way to get from that neighborhood to Tremblay School, and so I'm happy with the lease and putting those things in place in the lease around responsibility and stuff. And if somebody wants to lease that property, then that's a decision they make if they want to put a fence there for 10 years or not.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, and that's sort of my point. Perhaps we will inspire them not to build such permanent infrastructure if they only have a 10-year lease. I mean, to be honest, I don't want to see it all fenced in and blocked off, et cetera, et cetera. If they want to maintain it, they want to call it their own, fine. They can lease it, but a 10-year lease might inspire them not to be putting in such permanent infrastructure. And the ones that do have permanent infrastructure on there now might just remind them that they've got 10 years to get it rid of it.
Thank you. So we've had good discussion. I'm going to call the question on the motion that we instruct staff to bring back a recommendation or some input on a proposed lease for those walkways. So at this point, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. That gets us through.
Is there anything, the recommendation number 3 in there that we might want to look at? Or?
So,
I think so.
I think the first two are sort of.
Yeah, I just got to bring it up. Administration, anything further? Duncan?
So through your worship, was there mention of recommendation number 3? I think through this recommendation, we'll be following up with that entire block.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
This amends the policy to.
Oh, good.
That got it then?
Yeah.
Yeah, through your worship, unless council wants to work on the definition of the public need and adding that definition in walkway.
Councillor Parsons?
Yeah, I thought that was a useful piece to deal with.
Which recommendation is that?
Well, there's the definitions there.
Just the definitions
of-
under walkways.
So I'd be prepared to make that
Page 73.
motion. I thought that was handy to define that. So
Number
let's see.
3.
Number 3,
Okay.
I don't see what's wrong personally, unless it contramits, in some way what we've already proved. But I am thinking of making a motion of the entire motion. So any comments before I do that?
So through your worship, we're just talking about number 3 as far as the number 1, 2, 3, but not the reclaiming public use.
Okay, so I'll move that the walkway policy be amended in order to clarify the city's approach to mid-block walkways by adding a definition for direct public needs as follows. Walkways that provide a direct public need assist the city with any of the following. 1. Provides a continuous walking link or completes, extends, an existing link.
And existing.
Thank you. Provides a neighborhood shortcut or enhances neighborhood access, or parallels a utility corridor and is required in order to access utilities.
Perfect. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, so that gets us through 7.1. Now to item 7.2, our budget Report 17171 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our consolidated actual to budget variance report. Councillor Parslow.
Report 17171 from the CFO, re September the 30th, 2017, consolidated budget variance report we received for information.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.3, we have report number 17173 from the recreation manager in regards to free busing for shopping in Dawson Creek during idle less week in Dawson Creek. Councillor Schumann.
I move report number 17173 from the recreation manager regarding free busing for shopping in Dawson Creek and idle less week in Dawson Creek be received. Further, that council approve free transit busing services from November 18th to November 24th, 2017.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McFadden. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And report number 17174 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding the Emergency Preparedness Emergency Social Services Grant application. Councillor Parslow.
Report 17174 from the Director of Corporate Administration, re UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Emergency Social Services Grant application be received. Further, Council support an application for funding to UBCM for $25,000. Further, staff be directed to manage all aspects of the grant.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Rogers. Discussion? Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 8 is bylaws. 8.1, we have our local area service parcel tax roll preparation amendment bylaw 4363 for adoption. Councillor McFadden. Seconded. Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, we have our local area service parcel tax amendment bylaw number 4364 for adoption. Councillor Rogers, seconded. Councillor Javetkov, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And our fees and charges amendment bylaw 4365 for adoption. Councillor Javetkov, Councillor Schumann, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mayor's,
turn it around.
Mayor's business. Did I say Wilbur?
You tried.
I didn't.
We're used to it. We just answer. So that's good.
Let me see your names.
We need
So,
those things.
yeah. So I missed last meeting, and so I brought up our today Mayor's updates, and I wanted to talk about a few things. And Frank Briel, who contacted me when we were doing the archivist at the Calvin Kirk Center, and he mentioned to me about the St. Emile Cemetery and that piece of property that the city took over for $1. It's about 10 acres on the west side of town, out by the Poose River, out by the Spirit River Bridge, just at the top of the hill by Jim Norman. And there's a cemetery there that goes back into the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. They've done a bunch of work on that, and it was the original Catholic grave site. And I didn't know we owned a grave yard out there, and so it was really, really interesting to see the work that's been done by the society and the group that are trying to bring it, and I was going to say bring it back to life, but that wouldn't really be an appropriate statement, would it?
Refurb it.
But maintaining it, and it was very interesting, and the amount of work that's gone on in terms of identification of the folks that are there. They think there's about 50 burial sites there, and some of them without caskets, some of them just they believe wrapped in a blanket, and they've done their best to mark and identify those. And they've got a marker at the site with those that they've been able to identify, but some of the record keeping over the years was either done through the diocese in, I think, Prince George and Grand Prairie and Fairview or someplace. So anyway, I just found it very, very interesting. And then over the years, it was proposed to be a graveyard for the city, and developed into that, and so that city took over ownership of that property for $1, and we look after a little bit of the maintenance out there and things. But I just found it very interesting, and I didn't know if council were aware of the currency of that and that we owned it and all of that. So I just found it very interesting. So Councillor Schumann and Councillor Parsons.
Yeah, so sitting in this chair over the years, we've had Frank come in with the society and talk about the cemetery and the work that they're doing and stuff. So over the years, I've heard, and Councillor McFadden probably remembers hearing from Frank on this as well. And like, kudos to them. And Frank is such a passionate guy and does such great work. So I'm always happy to hear from him, and I'm glad he reached out and made you aware of all this.
The newbie on council, I didn't know about it, and so it was really good to get that information. Councillor Parsons?
Yeah, I think one council gave $40,000
Yes.
to support the reclaiming, I guess, of that cemetery. There's also documentation that you were given that I had a copy of that. If you like to know some of the early history of Dawson Creek, it's well worth reading the report and some of the names that I've heard for the 35 years or so I've lived here. I now know where some of those people come from, their heritage, and it's so I think staff have that as well. So it's very interesting material if you like to know some of the history.
Well, it was obviously very interesting to me, and then obviously the Councillor Schumann's Tremblay forefathers being the first settlers in the area, and there was some reference to the Tremblays within that documentation. Anyway, I just found it really interesting, and I'm really glad that I really appreciate Frank reaching out and giving me the opportunity to went out and spend a couple hours out. And we took the archivist from the Calvin Cook Center with us as well to just understand how important that is. So anyway, it's really good. Item 2, we mentioned during Katie's presentation that we had Mr. Brian Martin, or Director Martin, the director of the National Energy Board up in Dawson Creek a few weeks ago. And I had received a presentation from them through the Peaceful Regional District and found it really interesting. And so council had the opportunity to meet with Brian, and we had an update on that whole National Energy Board process. And we're seeing more and more development of interjurisdictional facilities, pipelines, and things that they're involved in. And so I found it very interesting. I appreciate council that were able to join us for an hour or two, and then took Brian for a little bit of tour of the community, and it was just more really good information for us as we understand the impacts, I think, of development that's going on in our community. And the NEB is one of those permitting processes for them that I thought was very good. We had the second annual 100 Men steak dinner a few weeks ago, and so I think we ended up, and thanks to Councillor Javekoff and putting it together and organizing it, and the meal up at the ski hill, and we had a real nice steak dinner, and I think we sold about close to 85 or 90 tickets, and we ended up with and the guys are all like they're good about supporting and paying. There was about 50 there that night, and so we had a real nice dinner, and ended up raising, I think Councillor Javekoff indicated $4,200 for Kids Sport. So that's a real nice, easy method to help support these really great community initiatives. And we had a fun night, and I did a presentation to the group on the economic impacts of our community and region, and so it was a real fun night. We had a good time, and appreciate, obviously, Paul and Sharon and all the work that they went into and the staff to put on a dinner for us, and we had a good night, so thank you.
Yeah, and as the chair of Kidsport for Dawson Creek for a number of years now, I really express my gratitude to yourself and Councillor Javekoff and everyone's hard work for doing this for us. We were getting quite low in funding, and we're having to look at, what are we going to do? How are we going to stretch this money out? And so having a little input into our funds was greatly appreciated. So I want to thank you very much for that.
Well, it was easy because we were talking about who do we find a local good organization, because we did the Legion early in the year, and then when I think you guys came and we did a presentation or something, and we said, oh, there it is.
I might have been crying or something.
But anyway, it was a good night, and it's such a cool way to see the community support. The girls do a great job of it, and they've had some amazing input into a number of really good, and Shantae's here today, and I've really done a great job of that. And so for us to be able to do something like this is easy and fun and a great way to support the community. Item 4, I had AltaGas, a representative from AltaGas, and AltaGas obviously we've got lots of stuff going on in and around their region, and I connected with them at UBCM and said, look, we haven't seen you guys for a bit, and we'd like to connect with you, and so the rep from AltaGas was in the community and did a tour of a little bit of stuff around town and the event center, and just continuing to push that relationship with these industry folks, and they're important to our community, and so I just wanted to let you know about that. At the last council meeting, I was asked by the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers if I would participate with them. The president of CAP, Kim McMillan, the president of the BC LNG Alliance, David Keane, the president of the First Nations LNG Alliance, Kim Ogden Toes, used to be the chief of Burns Lake, and that Sykes, I think, I can't pronounce it properly. Anyway, they were doing a presentation to the editorial board at the Vancouver Province and Sun and asked me if I would join them and give that community perspective of industry and impacts of industry and LNG and upstream. And so that's what I was doing 2 weeks ago, and participated in that panel with the editorial board from the Province and Sun. And those are the editors that are the ones that supply the content and agree to the content that's going into the papers. And the CAP folks wanted to get that message about the industry to them and try to ensure that the information that they have and how they're producing information and stories about the LNG industry and the natural gas sector, we could update them. And so that's what I did 2 weeks ago Monday, and why I wasn't here, but it was very worthwhile and really appreciated the opportunity to participate in it and talk about the upstream in Dawson Creek along that connection to LNG and stuff. So we did a presentation a week and a half ago to the bottle from the rum bottle from the time capsule to Carrie and Shields, the daughter of Walter Wright. And the family were here, and they gave us a couple of bottles to put in the new time capsule, and it really was, I think, a really great gesture on behalf of council to give that to Walter's daughter, and he was the one that was the driving force behind that time capsule. It's been so much fun to develop, and I know they really appreciated it, and it was fun. And I apologize, and I mentioned this to Councillor Schumann, because she kicked me in the knees over it. No, she didn't. But we get going and we get busy and doing things, and I keep, honestly, and I do it, it's not intentional, but I forget to involve you guys and invite council to those things that we're doing. And so I've got tabs on it, and we'll start to make sure that when we're doing things like that, we'll get you guys included in it and participate in it, because it's not that any other reason than just things are going a million miles an hour and I forget to invite you, so I apologize for that.
I accepted your.
I apologize for it. And I don't do it intentionally, it was just. So anyway, we'll do that in the future and do our best to engage council with it. When Peterbilt opened their office in their shop and location and dealership in Dawson, Jimmy Pattison was here and flew in with his jet, and we talked to him for a few minutes about the natural gas sector, and he and his guys that were there said, look, and he made the comment, he said, we don't understand this, and he said, asked if I'd be willing to come down and do a presentation to him, and so I said absolutely, and we got on that immediately. And so I had the opportunity to present to Mr. Pattison and one of his senior guys in his office. I invited Richard Dunn along from McCanna, because I thought if we're talking about the natural gas sector, I can only baffle him for so long and without starting to stumble. So I thought I better have somebody there that's got some credibility. And so Richard came along with me, and we spent about an hour and a half in Mr. Pattison's office talking about the natural gas sector, the upstream, the LNG, all of the components around that. He was very interested in it. He's so well connected and such an important business leader in not only BC but Canada. And a couple of comments he made about, you know, it was really evident how connected he is. And he said, and one of the, so I'll share this, one of the things he said, so you guys talked to Trudeau about this? And Richard smiled, he said, well, no, the CEOs are moving it up the line. And he said, well, I think he's here on Tuesday, we should talk to him then. It was kind of,
Please do.
Yeah. So the opportunity to me for us to get in front of him, that's a key business influencer in the province too. He's not involved in the natural gas sector or the energy sector. He probably won't be. He's retail and all that, but he's very interested in it, and it was very evident that he understood how important it was, and so for us to get in front of him on that, talk about Dawson Creek and how important, and he was obviously connected into it, so to spend an hour and a half in there, and I know Richard really appreciated it from a Canada's perspective to get in front, so it was, I've done some things as this, sitting in this chair as the mayor, but that's probably as influential as you'll ever get to somebody of that ability to influence the business world, and he's an influencer. Well, yeah, it was really good. Last week, we had a follow-up meeting with Greyhound in Prince George, and there's this Lynn Hall, Mayor Hall from Prince, and we had some representation from the West. Oliver from NCLGA was there, and myself, and it was a follow-up meeting from UBCM when we met with the Minister of Transportation on the withdrawal, the decision of Greyhound to make application to withdraw services from corridors within British Columbia. So we had the Vice President of Greyhound Canada was there, and the Vice President of the Western Region, and a couple of their other folks. And so we had a really good discussion with them about the implications of what they're doing and how they're struggling trying to provide service, and the regulatory process that they go through and what they have to meet, as well as how other people that are providing services within the North and the island that influence and impact their ability. But they talked about two things, and it's intercommunity, and then there's that intercity. And so if you said somebody come into this region and said applied to the Passenger Transportation Board and said we want to provide a service from Chetwynd or Tumbler Ridge into Dawson Creek to provide that passenger service to connect into Greyhound, that's one thing, and that benefits them. But when they take away from that core business for them when they're connecting intercity, and so the Highway Tiers, Highway 16, they've introduced transit in there, and it's being subsidized by the municipalities and the province, and it's impacting now their application of what they have to meet and the minimum levels of service they provide. It impacts their ability to be not only competitive but viable in terms of the services. And so it was really a good information discussion and exchange with them in terms of the implications of that. And so now we'll follow back up, and there's a model in Alberta that they've developed and are working on, and we're going to get some information on that. And then we'll follow back up with the Minister of Transportation because she's interested in it. But the objective is to try to find a viable, workable solution that makes it work for Greyhound as well as for our communities, and the isolation and the remoteness of the region and how big the North is with a small population. So anyway, their application is going forward. I think it'll be heard by the end of this month, and we'll continue to work with them to try to find a viable solution that we continue to see it. They're going to continue with their indication right now is the freight services will continue to be delivered. It won't be with the buses. It'll be with another model. So, Councillor Wilbur?
Was there, I know their claim is they're losing about $35,000 a day. Was there any indication from Greyhound that that was throughout all of BC, that loss, but why they were only focusing more on North Central BC as far as eliminating routes?
So their elimination of routes was on the island as well, and then the North, and it's just the implications of reduction in passenger traffic, passenger load, and that they say transit had some impact, Northern Health and their connection service they provide. So there's just been a whole bunch of, and just people aren't riding the bus the same as they used to, and so all of that. And when they make the application to the Passenger Transportation Board for their licensing, there's a minimum number of schedules that they have to meet. It's not a maximum, it's a minimum. So if they say you've got to run a minimum of 3 loads a day from Prince George to Rupert, and you got now a subsidized system within there, it's impacting their ability to continue to maintain service viably. And so, like I say, it's a complicated thing, and I think the more we can find a way to continue to work with them to look for ways that make it viable, and maybe the answer is have a local service that connects into their system that increases the amount of traffic that would come in on a viable schedule that helps influence and impact passengers for them, and to a connection or a feeder service. So, Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, This is super concerning, obviously, but I think that looking forward, if they are successful in shutting down these routes, we're going to really have to move in hard with the province and look for some sort of replacement or some sort of something that is going to work for the members of our communities that do use this service. And I mean, that's going to be work that we have to do as communities to get the province to step up, whether it's through transit or some other situation. But we can't lose that option for residents who can't drive or can't afford to fly, those kind of things. So
Yeah, like you say, it's a complex kind of thing, and to me, part of it is this regulatory process that they have to meet. And
Yeah.
when it should be, and the guy used the term, it should be a maximum number of connections per day versus a minimum. Because if they say we're only getting 2 a day coming out of Whitehorse to Dawson Creek, that's not viable.
Right.
But they've got to maintain a schedule of a minimum of 3 a week or 5 a week. Well, if they had a maximum number and say, okay, we can do it now on 2 trips a week or 1 trip a week, maybe that's still viable. It's still, but so there's that regulatory process, but it's also the transit's been now communities on the west are feeding into that service to try to help provide a service for those at-risk people, and so now you got a subsidized service competing against them, and that's taken away from their viability. So there's a whole bunch in that pot.
Yeah.
And so we're just working away with them, trying to find a way to continue to engage and find a way to work, find a solution, as well as work with the Ministry of Transportation, because she was very good at the UBCM. And so Lynn Hall and Carol Leclerc from Terrace and myself and a few of the others are working with them, representing the regions to try to do that.
yeah, no, it's good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Because we didn't have anything to do. No, that's good. So we've had a couple of discussions, Duncan and I, with the Dawson Creek Curling Club over the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, primarily over as the pad replacement at the curling club was delayed as a result of that water getting into the pad. They couldn't dry it and couldn't get the floor poured, which resulted in a delay in them getting the facility opened. And so now getting the season off, it's delayed them a little bit in membership and length of the season. And they've got some bonspiels that they've got planned. And so we were looking at, and they're looking at now the financial impact for them continuing to be viable in terms of operating costs and all of that. So they've come forward, and Duncan and I met with Jeff last week because we're looking at a way to facilitate that delay in the season start for them to get them started. And we're looking at the Encana Event Center because we've got the ice in, and to be able to use that as a way for them to transition until we get the ice in to the curling club and get their season underway. And, but unfortunately, there's some decisions that are impacting that, as well as some financial stuff for them. And so I wanted to bring that forward today for council because there's some time frames that we've got to kind of get in front of council. So one of them is using the Encana Event Center. We can't get the ice in until November 27th or 28th at the earliest at the curling rink. And they've got a bonspiel plan that was impacting them. And so the plan is to keep them in the Encana Event Center if we can, to allow them to do that event in the Encana Event Center while they're getting the ice in and ready at the curling rink. But there's financial components to that in terms of additional costs and loss of revenue for them because they're not hosting it. And so there's a, Duncan, do you want to go through kind of you've got the...
Sure. So met with the curling club, and Brenda's excused herself with as being personally related to the manager of the curling club. That's why she's not here. So we met with Jeff, and Jeff talked a little bit about just not being able to rent out the facility over the summer and the late start, and they've reduced their curling fees. He also talked about council's previous commitment to the South Peace Art Society in 2015, where council offset some of their lost revenues up to $30,000 that year, and just talked about this Bonspiel, and although we could have the ice in the curling club midweek, 29th, November 29th, something like that, this opportunity to generate maybe some additional revenue and try to kick the season off by hosting a Bonspiel in the event center and a arena ice, and that opportunity versus going back to the curling club, just trying to kickstart things and get everybody back into curling again, and that opportunity. With that comes a cost, and it's up to approximately $30,000, is about the same as the art gallery, and yeah, so there's an opportunity there, and he asked the mayor if the mayor would be willing to bring that forward, and we've done some work on availability of funding. And Adam's checked out the sponsorship side of it, Adam, and where we sit currently today, three meetings remaining, I believe, before Christmas. And where are we at, Adam?
$19,500.
$19,500 remaining in our sponsorship opportunity there, and also the budget variance shows there's some opportunity in there as well.
So for me, the aspect of, and I think back to 4 years ago or 3 years ago when the curling club came in here and were in dire straits looking for the help from the utilities. The club was going, was really struggling with membership, and then the compressor and the chillers and all of that stuff caused some additional aspects to them, but they were showing life back into the organization. The curling club was revitalized, and it was showing that it was coming back on its feet, and so this year now, by doing the pad replacement, has delayed them a little bit, and so they're looking for some support from council to try to continue to build curling and continue to build their opportunities that come from operating that facility and the revenue, but they've been impacted financially as a result of delayed in registration, so they've lost membership from there. They've lost some opportunities at hosting events that were revenue generators for them upstairs, and so they're looking for council to see if we would consider giving them some support. And I said, I'll bring it back to the table for discussion. Councillor Rogers and Schumann.
Have we heard from the event center manager, like Ryan, I guess, on, like, is he okay with it?
Sure. So through your worship, I spoke with the event center manager quite some time about this, as far as just covering the ice itself. Really, the question today is about the Bonspiel. He's on board, although it's a bit of a rush. He understands that working with the city to provide the services that we continue to provide and exceptional opportunities, and also that sport tourism piece, and maybe that opportunity to try out the curling again on a smaller scale, but in the venue.
And the other piece for them is, by doing it this way, not only do they have to pay the cost, but they lose the revenue that they would normally do by putting the meal on themselves, running the bar, and all that stuff. So, Councillor Schumann, then back up and back in.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you've had these conversations with them, and that we're looking for some ways to help them out on this. I would totally be in favor of putting forward a motion, I would put forward a motion that we do find up to $30,000 to help them out with this. I know we did work really hard with the arts groups when we did, kick them out of the art gallery for a significant amount of time, and all of this work is certainly having an impact on the curling club, and I would absolutely support and would move that we help them out financially with our sponsorship money and whatever other money we can dig up for them. So I'm going to put that as a motion.
Thank you. Seconding? Okay, discussion, Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I was just wondering, was it the money or was it the ice?
Duncan? So, sorry, if you just clarify for me, the money.
Well, is it we're going to give them $30,000, or are we just going to say you can go ahead and have your Bonspiel at the Encana Event Center, and I guess we would end up paying for the ice itself?
Duncan?
So, through your worship, we've worked with the event center to provide that ice. The Bonspiel is really the question right now, and that funding of the Bonspiel and some of those other associated costs that go along with it, whether it be meals or evening activities that they have planned to make this a little bigger than what they would normally do at the curling club to try and kick off the season.
And one other thing, you touched on it, your worship, was the food and beverage. So The food and beverage wouldn't directly go to the curling club, that would go to the,
Brian, through their stuff.
yeah.
So there,
So
Jeff,
then that kind of comes back to us as
the,
well.
the impact of the curling club in terms of their financial analysis for this year is about $85,000 that they've been impacted by in terms of this whole project of the delay and loss of opportunities in the summer and loss of registration because they've had they're going to have a reduced season, all of that. So what they're saying is if we can do this event in the Canada Event Center, it may open up another event for them to do a major event if they can demonstrate they can pull it off there, but there's additional costs, and so that's what they're asking for, is if council would help them with that, because then it helps them offset some of those additional costs by doing it there. Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Javeco.
Well, we've discussed some of these aspects before, and if I can use the expression, red herring of what we did for the art was rejected by council for good reasons. I mean, here we're talking the Art Society receives a fee for service. It's providing a service that the city would otherwise provide. We need to distinguish between public and private. This is a private club. And so are we opening a can of worms here for other private operations? The work for the art gallery was initiated by the city. This work was initiated by the curling club. They applied for a grant. Many of us felt that we didn't need this work done for quite a few years, if you remember the discussion. So I have problems with the loss of revenue of the summer. This is an apples to oranges comparison. Are we then going to support other private clubs who run into some financial difficulty? I'm not asking for an answer. That's the question I'm asking myself, okay? Certainly I'm all in favor of trying to bridge the season by the Encounter Event Center stuff, but it does irk me about what was done at the art gallery. We debated, this is not the first time Jeff has raised that flag, and council discussed it and rejected it. So I think we need to separate the two. I'm certainly looking for ways that we can bridge it, but this loss of revenue stuff at summer just irks me.
Okay, and so I'm just going to clarify one point, because when we did the analysis on the chillers, compressors, one of the things that come as a component to that was we're going to need to replace the pads in all three of those facilities within the next 5 to 7 years, and that was at a cost of about, I thought my recollection was about $6 or $7 million for the three of them. And so with the Canada 150 grant, the curling club initiated that application to get that $500,000 to help offset the cost of that. So it was part of our capital program that we had agreed to take on as part of replacing the chillers and compressors, because they said those pads were going to be needing to be replaced. And I know Councillor Javetkov had raised that some of that, is it actually, do we need to do it, or is there deflection in there? But that was part of my recollection. Duncan, I'll ask you you were involved in it.
Sure. So through your worship, the curling rink was identified as requiring updates in the immediate future. We didn't have a time frame. The grant came forward, and council took that opportunity to do that work at that time. We didn't have it in the budget at that time, but it was the first priority to be done, and it would have been done at some point.
You want to go ahead?
The grant was applied for without council's involvement, and then we were informed, oh, we've got this $500,000 grant, and so we had not decided to do that work. We were going to monitor the situation. We were going to have survey things done, etc. Also, you'll recall whether we needed an 8-sheet of ice or 4-sheet of ice, and all that was part of the discussion. I admire what the work's been done at the curling club, right? But and I can't, as I said before, I can't see a community of this size without a curling club. But the apples to oranges comparison and leveraging that appalls me.
Okay. So I got Councillor Javetkov and Councillor Schumann.
So, just on the ice, I was just going by Forest Engineering's report that said we still had 20 years of life there.
That's right.
So the grant was applied for by the curling rink, which kind of pressured us into going with the new floor because, geez, we had $500,000 already. But so why did they lose revenue upstairs? The upstairs wasn't affected. So are they saying that they've lost revenue from not using the upstairs?
Duncan?
So, through your worship, I can only speak to what I've been told by the manager in the curling club, but some of the opportunities were limited while we were hammering out the concrete in the facility. We were working quite robustly and carrying some pretty long hours in that construction component and heavy equipment operating within the building. And also, I know, for instance, I think your club went over to the event center because of the unavailable of the pad, so I think it's a combination of those two.
But we were downstairs.
Correct.
So I can understand that.
Yeah.
So that's a $2,000 loss. But upstairs, I mean, they're not working 24 hours a day and they're not hammering from April to, August or September. So I would like to see the numbers there, some information. But so I still am not clear what this $30,000 is for. Is it to pay the Encana Center for the work that they have to do to develop this rink there?
So through your worship, it's not to do with the ice. The ice is in, and the work to bring the existing ice level to the curling rink is more around pebbling and some of that other work, painting over the existing logos. It's more of the other opportunities that go along with the curling rink. They have some activities in the evenings. Normally, they have social activities. That they offer a bar, and then also with the with the Bonspiel, they have 3 or 4 different meal opportunities. They also have a licensed space where people who aren't curling can watch and have some alcoholic beverages. So it's the whole gamut of, in addition to the ice.
So what are they doing, providing meals and liquor to the people that are coming there for free?
So through your worship, no, the event center would be charging the curling club for the hours of operation for the beverages and also for the meals, and the city would be offsetting that cost as part of that $30,000.
So if I go there, the city will be paying for my food and beverages?
No.
So through your worship, your team will pay a banquet fee. You will pay, with that banquet fee, usually the meal is covered. In this case, because the curling club is not offering the meal, they're not providing the meal, they can't offset that cost. The curling club will still receive the banquet fee, and they will still have their cash draws and all of the opportunities that they normally have within their facility, but the city money will be paying for the cost of the meal. The teams will still be paying for the meal, but it'll be through their banquet fees that go to the curling club. So it's a revenue opportunity for them without the cost.
Have Councillor Schumann and Councillor Rogers.
I think that you covered off my thoughts a few speakers back when you mentioned the opportunity brought to us to get that capital work done maybe sooner than we had anticipated doing it, but with some input of some grant money, it was definitely beneficial to us. I'm going to vote in favor of the motion I moved, and that's that.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I think that if you ask staff, is it a good thing that we had done the slab now? I believe the answer would be yes, rather than doing it later. The opportunities were there to do it sooner than later, but also we have a facility, and that facility, in my opinion, is underutilized. And if this is an opportunity to enhance and to promote that facility and get the word out that, we can actually do this as well, I would be okay with that. Also, the only thing I haven't heard is we're talking about a bonds bill. How many of these people are coming from out of town, and what would the numbers be for people coming out of town? And that way I can kind of put an idea of what kind of economic input we're going to have with that.
I think he said there's about 160, about 40 teams, 400 team, 160 curlers. He didn't talk about the split between local and
Yeah.
out of town.
Yeah, but it's still, 160 people, half of them, I would say, would be probably come from out of town. Because the amount of curlers that we do have, I think, is only about 123.
Many of them are
registered or something.
Many of them.
Yeah. So it's bringing people in, and I think that's what we were.
One of the things that he did, we did talk about was this arena event where you can then apply for maybe provincial or national events at the event with having that seating and our arena thing. Councillor DeBecco?
We've had major events there already for curling.
Yeah.
So we've established the fact that we can do it and successfully. So I imagine Barry will be getting some big bonspiels in. But I'm not in favor of a $30,000 donation without seeing the numbers. I mean, I've put on bonspiels for 24 rinks, and we've paid for the whole cost $10,000. So I don't know where the $30,000 comes from. And just to shovel money out of the back of the truck, I'm not in favor of that.
Thank you. Further discussion? You're ready for the question?
No. He's got a good point.
So one of the opportunities, I'll use that term, is we're in November. They're 4 weeks away from having to make the decision on this event. And if we leave it for 2 weeks to bring that information back, they're only 2 weeks away from basically trying to put a bonspiel and an event on and how they start their season. That's why it's here today. Councillor Parslow.
Yes, so I have the problems. I'd need the motion rereading to me in a minute. But yeah, I can support facilitating the bonspiel, but I'm not open to just giving money away without documentation. So I'm looking at wonder is the way of separating the motion and vote on two parts. There's supporting the bonspiel from the point of view is operation, and if that needs some subsidy, fine. And then if this lost revenue in the summer, I want documentation, just like the Art Society was supposed to provide.
Yeah. Sorry, and so this 30 is for them to is to put the event on and secure the Encana Event Center to be able to put the event on there without having that additional cost of putting the event on at the event center, because they can't control. Ryan, food and beverage, all of those things go to Global Spectra, and we have a contract with them. So, sorry, the lost revenue and all of that stuff was just stuff that they've experienced over this year. What they're saying is for us to try to put the event on, Ryan has indicated to staff that it's going to be about 30 grand for them to do that. And so that's the request today. Sorry, and I didn't mean to muddle that with that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, can I speak?
Yep.
Sorry. So the intention is in the implicit, or maybe it's explicit, and I'm the stupid one here, but let's say implicit in the motion is to enable the bonspiel to happen.
At the Encana Event Center.
At the Encana Event Center.
Yeah.
And that is where any financial support would be.
Right.
In that
Yes.
direction.
Yeah. Duncan?
Yes, through your worship. I don't want to muddy it at all. There's some additional costs of operation outside of the ice where they have an expectation to their members that we have to maintain, such as food and beverage opportunities in the evening and etc. But for the most part, it's the bonspiel.
And so then what they've said is, Jeff said, is they'll take on that added responsibility of getting got to get the equipment down there to be able to maintain and look after the ice. They're going to be putting it into both, so he's going to be running back and forth to try to do that. He's going to be helping out because he's the only ice maker for curling, so there's some cost in that. But he's saying that we can do that and we can work that out. It's just that added cost of putting it on at the event center, and that's the number we got from Ryan, so that's why we brought it forward today. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, so then I guess my motion was, provide the $30,000 to enable this bonspiel to happen at the Encana Event Center And I think my seconder is happy with that. And I'm going to call the question.
Does everyone clear on the motion then? Is that,
I
no?
thought the original motion was up to 30,000, not just 30.
Okay,
Wasn't
up
it?
to 30,000.
Yeah, I think
It
that's.
was up to 30, okay.
So,
Counselor
is that up to 30,000 with documentation, or?
Well, certainly we'll bring that back. We can easily bring that back from the Encana Event Center. This is the other piece, right? So we lay this on Ryan because of the stuff, and he's right in the heart of U17 and trying to get that done. And so it's just been really, the last 3 or 4 days for everybody's been a little bit clunky for that. Yeah, so I'll just go Paul and then.
So I can support it if it's, you know, to put the bond spiel on. I mean, it's like paying ourselves, or, you know, we're supporting the Encana Event Center, which we're paying for in the end anyways, so I can support that.
Okay.
And time is of the essence, and that's how I looked at it myself, so.
When we met with Jeff, I'll tell this story because Doug said, well, we'll get this done and we'll bring it back. And I said, yeah, no, it's November. We're talking December 8th. They got to plan a bond spill. Ryan's got U17 going until November 11th. And so if we leave it till after that, it's 2 weeks. There's no way you can organize it, invite, and put it together and plan it. And so that's honestly, I put it under my mayor's business because I didn't see any other way to get it. And I apologize to you guys for not having the information, but there wasn't anything we could do about it.
There's a concert in there to throw it into the mix too.
Well, I wasn't gonna all of this is a good thing in some respects, and I appreciate the pain for you guys in this decision. Councilor Parsley, you had one more?
Oh, I'm just anticipating the vote.
Okay.
Yes.
We're called the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
What is
Thank
this
you.
stuff now?
And now I got one more because Councilor Parslow had brought forward a motion that we would consider a policy for plaques for the city on infrastructure and things, and so we'll bring that forward. Councilor Schumann?
So moved.
Seconded, Councilor Wilbur. Discussion? All those in favor?
Good idea.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. It is a good idea. Diary? Consent calendar? Got a couple items, but nothing significant in consent. Strategic priorities? Question and answer period? Nobody signed up. Thank you. Media question? Thank you, media, for coming today. I'm teasing. Eric told me he was going to be here.
We're
today.
getting Marlon a new, double name tag. You have to do both.
Motion to recess to close, please. Councilor Rogers, Councilor Parslow, all in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you. So we'll go to recess, closed in 5 minutes.